Okay, so let's see how this goes. I've basically got half an hour, and the idea is to have a quick little go at some Python as an introduction to the language while doing one of the Advent of Code challenges. I haven't done this challenge before. I've had a quick glance at it, but so here we are on the adventofcode.com website. It's the day 8 challenge, just because that's the one that I haven't done. I've done the ones beforehand. So I've done 1 through to 7, and I need to do 8 next. Okay, there's a lot of blurb, a lot of story. You can pause and read that in your own time, but basically what it seems like we need to do is we need to start with AAA, and then we need to look up the next element based on the instructions. So if we start with AAA, the first instruction is to go R, which means we pick up the right hand item in that pair, and so that we then jump to the row that begins CCC, and the next instruction is L, so we choose the left element, and so basically whenever we reach ZZZ we finish, and here it's done in 2 steps. Now I've already got the puzzle input. It's a bit tiny, isn't it? Let me make it a bit bigger. That's here. So obviously it's massive for us, for the real job, as compared to the little example. So what's quite nice to do sometimes is just to grab the sample so you can test. So we can test our solution on the sample and see that we agree. Okay, so I don't know whether we can use this sample, I suppose. We've got a couple, right? We've got this one here and this one here. Let's use this one because it takes 6 steps. So I'm just going to copy that across and put it into a sample.txt. So what I've done is I've made a folder for the 8th Advent of Code challenge, and in there at the moment it's just input.txt and then this sample.txt into which we're going to paste that thing. So then when we run our code on this sample, we should be able to check that at least we get the same result as the sample. Okay, so the first part, sorry, there are always 2 parts to the challenges, and so the first part seems quite straightforward, right? Just read those instructions to either pick the left or the right part, and then we will keep going until we hit ZZZ. Alright, let's start doing some Pythoning. I'm going to put the Python code in exactly the same directory, and just going to launch a terminal window so you can see what we're doing. Try and make it a bit bigger. Okay, so let's go to this year's challenge 8, right? And if we have a look in here, of course you can use your graphical file manager, but if we have a look in here, we've got those 2 things. Let's just check how long they are. Word count also gives us a line count, so we've got 760 sort of entries in the proper one, but in the sample there are only 5 lines in the entry. Alright, enough talking, let's start actually having a go at this. So I'm going to make a new Python file. I don't know what to call it, I'll just call it advent.py, and it would be nice, so I'll explain bits that I do as we go along, but it would be nice to be able to run this code on a sample as well as on the input. So because we're going to want to, basically we want to be able to type a command like this, Python 3, if I could type properly, or just Python even, it doesn't matter, it should be Python 3. Yeah, it's Python 3 anyway. Okay, so we should be able to just type Python and the name of our program, so advent.py, and then we should be able to pass in either sample.txt or input.txt. So I want to be able to run this. And so because I want to interact with the sort of the system and the command line, I just need to import a module called sys. I'll make this bigger again so you can see it. Okay, that will just let us read the command line. Okay, now a bit of Python that's just take it as read. They call it boilerplate. Basically, it's just code that has to be there to make things work. So if I want to be able to call this Python file from the command line and just run it as a main program, then what will happen is it will have this variable called underscore underscore name underscore underscore. It will be called main. And this is just kind of a little, I don't know, a little secret hidden way that Python lets its program know that it's being run from the command line as a main program. And basically, we can, if that is the case, we can ask it to do whatever we want. So the convention is that we actually make a function called main, and that runs the main event. So if, for example, if I do this def main, it will run my function, and I could just say something like, right, so it's not very exciting. Let's run it and see if that works. There we go. Hi there. One interesting thing about Python is that the logic is done through indentation. So blocks of code are sort of separated by indentation. So you'll see here that I had an if statement, and then I put 4 spaces main. So basically, if I put things with 4 spaces, they're all part of that block that's executed if this condition is true. Same here with the definition of a function. If I stop indenting, then that I will have stopped defining that function. So, okay. And so what we want to do is we want to pick up that. So the first thing is we want to know what the text file is that we're working on. So let's try and remember how to do that. So I think it is so that module has an attribute called argv, so the argument values, and it's a list of things, and basically I think the first thing will be the name of the program. So we start indexing from 0, so the 0th argument, if you like, is the actual program name. But so the first proper argument, I think, will be that one. So we'll assume that's the case, and what we'll do is we will open that file and read the lines in it. So we'll do it like this. So we pass in what file name we want to open, and we say how we want to open it. So we want to read textual information, and then we give a name to the file handle. So basically, this lets us kind of interact with that file. So I'm just going to be calling it f. Right, never mind the print here. So again, because this is a command block, we're going to indent. So we're going to go 4 spaces in. I just use my tab key on my keyboard. It's automatically set in this editor to jump 4. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to just check that we've got the right file. Okay, so I should have a file handle here, and what I can do is I can say, grab me all the lines from that file. So, okay, so here I've defined a variable. I haven't had to say what type it is, it just automatically sort of sorts that out, and it depends on what this spits out. So this will spit out an array, or sorry, a list of strings, and then basically I can just check what I've got. So I can say print, again some funky stuff here, but print I got so we'll just report how many lines we've got. Okay, so len means length of something. So if something is something that has a length, we can just kind of call len on it, and we can basically report that in here. And there's a special way of formatting strings where you can drop in variable values. So basically, because I've put f in front of the string, it's going to format the string in such a way that when it encounters something in braces, it'll drop in the value of that variable. So hopefully now, if I save that again and rerun it with sample, right, I've got 5 lines. If I was to run it with the big input, it's got 760 lines. Okay, so now we've been able to read a file. Now we want to actually do something with those files. So the first thing was that we wanted the instructions, right? So instructions, and they were the first line. Okay, if you remember, I said Python starts usually numbering things from 0, so the 0th item is what we would call our first line. Okay, and just to demonstrate what happens here. This should be exactly what we think it's going to be. So these are the instructions, right? And just to show you what we can do is, no, actually no. Let me leave that there. I'll just do that there for now. Okay. So what do we want to do? We want to, I want to go through all the other lines and basically build up, sort of save all the entries in such a way that we can then follow them. So let's in the first place just grab all the entries. So what we'll do is we'll loop through everything from line 0, 1, from line 2 onwards, right? We don't, line 0 had the instructions, line 1 is blank, so from line 2 onwards. So here's what we do, we say for line in lines 2 onwards. Okay, and that's basically saying start from item number 2 and go to the end, because I've left that blank. I could have said number 2 to number 5, but that means to the end. There's a colon at the end of most sort of the start of any block. So there's a colon at the definition of a function, at the beginning of this block. Oh, and by the way, once we've read those lines, we actually don't need to worry about that file anymore. So I can kind of can bring all these things back, because that file can now be closed because we've read the lines into memory, basically into our variable of lines. Okay. Anyway, so we'll go through these lines, and what are we doing? We're trying to build. We want to recognize that each entry is like a dictionary entry, right? We've got a thing, and then we've got a left and a right item. So we just want to build this data structure. So if we have, they call them nodes, don't they? So let's call it nodes. So nodes, this means an empty dictionary. So it's where you have a key that leads to a value. Okay, now we're going to process the lines. So as we go through the lines, there's lots of cheat ways of doing this, but basically, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say key and rest, and essentially I'm going to take that line, and everything that is a string can be split by a character. So we're going to split by the equals. So basically I just want to grab, okay, never mind. Yeah, I want to just grab the AAA, so we're going to be using space equals space as a sort of separator. I've just thought that actually there are better ways of doing it with something called regular expressions, but for now let's try and keep things simple. In fact, we can do it even more simply. Right, forgive me. Okay, this is what we can do. Right, we can say, because these are formatted beautifully and it's always the same, right? If we look at the input, everything is 3 letters, 3 letters, 3 letters. So we can sort of rely on that. So what I can do instead is I can say the key is line from 0 to 3. Okay, just trust me, this gets the first 3 characters for now. We could drop the 0, and it would still do the same thing. It's like from the beginning to, and 3 means kind of just before the character number 3 starts, which remember is actually the 4th character because we're starting counting from 0. Anyway, don't worry. This is the first 3 items. The 0 can be there or missing. It doesn't matter. So that's the key, and then we want the first item, right? The first entry. So let's call it first item or first val. So okay, let's have val 1, and we get that again from the line, and then we'll have val 2 that also comes from the line. Okay, so let's just count carefully now. So we've eaten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've eaten 7 characters before we get to BBB. So we want to go from 7 to 10. Then we want to swallow a couple more characters, which is the comma and the space. So I guess we'll be starting at 12 to 15. Okay. So again, let's just check that this makes sense. Remember the F before the string. Okay, this is just to check that we haven't done something stupid. There's every chance that I've done something stupid, but let's just check. No, that was good. Okay, so it's for them in collect different samples, so we know about that stuff. And remember, I said that I set up something called a dictionary. So what instead of printing this stuff, I'm just going to shove it into that dictionary. Okay, so the way you add things into a dictionary, or one of the ways you can do it, is you can sort of say, right, at this particular key, what I want to appear, so this is an assignment, I'm saying assign against that key, and we're going to assign a pair of values, which you can do in Python, and I'm literally going to shove in those two things, okay? And now, again, just to double check we've got the right thing, I'm going to print the dictionary as a whole at the end, just to kind of double check it looks reasonable. So let's try on sample. So there we go. We've got that dictionary where it seems to be reading things incorrectly from our sample. One thing that worries me is what if there are repeated keys, but if we look at the proper input, I'm assuming that they are all different. Otherwise it would be confusing, right? Because if KFC had two separate entries, we wouldn't know where to go. So I'm going to make that assumption and not worry about it for now. Okay, so we've got the data. We're now actually got to do the thing, right? We've got our nodes ready. So remember, we have to start from AAA. We have to count how many steps we've done. If you just look back at the example that they gave us here, we start with AA. So we looked up the right thing, which was C, and then we picked up the C. So that was one step taken. Okay, so yeah, that was 2 steps. Here is 6 steps because we started with A. We took the left, which said B. Okay, that took us here. Then we took the left, which said A. That's 2 steps. Then we took the right. Oh. Hang on. Oh, if you run out of left-right instructions, repeat the whole sequence of instructions as necessary. Okay, that's good to know, isn't it? Flippin' heck. Okay. Okay, that'll be something to bear in mind then. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to keep going around sort of forever, so this is a dangerous thing to do. And our instruction is the first available, or the next available instruction. Okay, so one way I can do this is just you can do something called pop. So I can illustrate this. If we go into Python, one nice thing about Python is you can actually just go into it and use it as an interpreter and just try things out. So let's say I had a list, and the list had the numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Right, first of all, you can sort of ask things about what's available. So I can say, what things can I do with this object? And it tells you all the various things, one of which is pop. You can even ask for help with pop, and it tells you sort of what it does. And by default, it brings the last, it returns the thing off the end of the list. So if I said l.pop, it would return me the 10, and it would lop it off the list. So That's interesting. Obviously, I don't want that. I want to get the first item. So if I pop 0, it gives me the first item. But now you can see the list has lost our first item. Right, so this is good for us because what we want is we want to grab the first instruction, and then what we want to do is if we've run out of instructions, so if len L, if the length of the list is now 0, then let the, sorry, not L, what about L? Instructions. We will just reassign it to what it was in the first place, which was the first line of our input. Okay? So that should replenish it if we run out of instructions. Okay, so the other thing we want to do is keep count of the steps. So at the beginning, we've not taken any steps yet. Okay? And so every time we do a lookup, then we will increase our steps. Okay. So, okay, let's get back to here. So that little block was just about refilling the instructions. Right, we've got our first instructions. What we want to do is we want to start with AAA, don't we? So let's initialize our key or our node to AAA. Right, so we will start from there. Okay, so here's what we do. We check if the current node that we're on is equal to ZZZ, then we finished, right? And so we want to break out of this while loop. We just say break. Notice that it's a double equal when we're checking equality. Single equals means you're assigning a value. Okay, so it's like saying let node equal that, whereas here you're checking if it's equal. Okay. So that's how we'll finish if we've actually landed on ZZZ. So so the next node, we've got our instruction. Yeah, okay, we've got instruction. So if the instruction is left, so if inst equals L, then the next node is, so we go to our dictionary, right? We'll just come out a minute, and for example, we had a dictionary like that, right? We go to our dictionary, and whichever the current node is, we go to that entry. So we say nodes, boom, and we go to whatever the current node is, right? That gives us that pair. Well, if the instruction is left, then from that pair we want to grab the first item. Okay? Otherwise, it must be right. So we're still looking at that entry, but this time we pick the right item. Okay? And now all we've got to do is we've got to say, okay, we've chosen our new node, so we must set node to what this next node is, and we must count an extra step. So steps, this is a quick and cheeky way to say whatever the value on the right is, add it on to whatever the current value of steps was. Probably forgotten something, but I think that's what the logic was. Okay, so let's see if this works. Once we've finished that, at the end we just want to report the total number of steps. Okay, I've probably made a mistake. So let's just run it on the sample first. Right, fair enough. Okay, and that's because the instructions was a string. It was a whole big fat string it wasn't a list of strings. So I tried to pop something off a simple string. Okay, that's not a problem. So here's what we'll do. We'll say that that's the string with instructions, and then we'll actually make a thing that's the instructions. And I think what we can do is we can basically just split on the empty string, which I think should give us a list of things. Let's try that out. Okay, so if my string was A, B, C, D, E, F, let's try and split it on the empty string. Oh, no, okay. Okay, I think there's another way of doing it. Let's do it like this instead. C for C in S, so that's more like it. Okay, fine. Basically, this is a way of creating a list out of looping through a list. So you're basically saying, treat the string as if it was a list, and it magically then turns into a list of characters. I'm saying for every character in there, then just return that character, right? So here we could, for example, do something weird with it, like get the uppercase version of it, or you can do more things before you return your list. But for us, we just want the list of items. So hopefully, yeah. So again here, rather than doing that, we want to basically repeat this thing, right? So I'm just going to grab that bit, copy it, and chuck it in here, and let's see if it's happy now. Let's rerun that sample thing. Okay, that's not what I was expecting at all. So, let's just take off that new line off the end. There we go. Okay, so what was happening was I didn't strip off the enter at the end of the first line, and so it was thinking that was instruction, and so presumably it was going into this block. Okay, anyway, so it seems to be giving back the 6. Let's just run it on the input and see if I don't know if code likes it. So this time we can run it on the full input. It reckons it took 16, 3, 4, 3 steps. Let's check whether they agree. Yay! Okay, done. So that's just a very quick fire, very messy demonstration input. Of course, now there'll be a harder part 2 where you have to do other things, but I'll do that another time. So I don't know what else to say other than the editor that I'm using is called Emacs, but there are much prettier editors, and there are even specific development environments that will help you sort of autocomplete commands and then know all about Python. But I like to keep things kind of simple and basic. Okay, that's all for now. I hope it was interesting. Let me know.